damn it.
Welcome.
Oh. Check. Yeah, okay. It's recording now. Yep, that's the difference between the difference between the and cut. There it is. Yes. Nailed the audish. The difference between this time that I'm doing the intro and the time that I just did it for like 10 minutes before this was that I'm recording this time. I hope. I pray when I wake up, when I go to bed. Speaking of waking up, I was on this crazy rant about early morning stuff, just the concept of early mornings. And then I realized I was not recording. So I said some awesome stuff. So just imagine everything I said was cool about that. It is an early morning. I was just saying I'm awake. It's not early now, but when I woke up, it was early. And yeah, you guessed it. Time passed, and now it's a really normal time to be awake for me. And for everyone, which is weird that I am now, everyone's putting the pressure on me to decide what time is early to wake up. Let's move past that. If we can be grown-ups for just a moment and just look past that shit. Maybe not. Maybe I can't go another second without a drink of coffee. Okay, I was right. I had to wake up early this morning. I got to wake up early this morning. I'm thankful for it because I saw the sunrise with my beautiful lover, my love. Because she had to go to the airport to leave for a tour that is happening. So we woke up very early to take her there. It felt like Christmas morning for me as someone who grew up celebrating Christmas. It was so strange to be awake at like 5 a.m. because I haven't done that in a long, long time. I used to do it a lot, like especially last year. I was awake so frequently that early. But to be awake that early now is like really beautiful. And especially to be going to the airport to drop someone I love off to go do a thing that they love. Specifically, a thing that I also love. To be touring again is wild. We leave super soon to go do the same thing. We're not flying anywhere, but we will be in a van quite a bit. I think by the time this is out, we will probably have come back from that run. But we got a lot in the books, which is fucking awesome. It's weird to get your hopes up and down. I mean, we've had like, you know, in regards to like traveling safely, it's difficult to be optimistic because like it's just kind of seems, I don't want to say foolish, but like it seems like the odds are stacked against everything going perfectly, which is fair. And the fact that we even get to tour in a version of touring that is like really heavily considering safety and other people's safety, like we're getting to do that. Like I just talked to my buddy Noah, who plays drums for us, and a bunch of other people, and I love the way he talked about like touring now. You know, there's a lot of things obviously that will never be the same. Maybe not never, but for the foreseeable future will not be the same. But there are a lot of things that are, like he said, that there are a lot of things that we can preserve and then highlight, you know, and especially in regards to the actual show and the actual music itself. It's like we probably won't get to hang after shows and meet people and make new friends the way we used to, but it like adds an emphasis on the actual show. Like, not that wasn't the most important thing before, but like now it's like you have to communicate through an hour of music, not only the stories of those songs, but like how badly you want to be connecting with people, if that's what you want. For us, that's like kind of the thing I dig the most about it, but who gives a damn what I think? But yeah, it's good. My partner was very excited to leave this morning. She is usually not very happy if we have to wake up that early, but she was in a good mood because she was going on the road. Oh, I'm smiling just talking about it. Yeah, it's been rainy a lot here. And so for those of you betting on whether or not it was rainy where I live, you take your tickets to the bet counter and collect your prize, my beautiful prince. My beautiful prince. Collect your prize. Today's episode, hold on, is with, I've like, anxiety, sickness shit is real, dude. I've been so stressed about my partner having to leave that I literally have felt like so tense. And then this morning I was just normal sad, but as soon as she left, I realized it was like my body just let me know that like it was freaking out because it didn't want her to go. But yeah, I mean, I can't believe there was a time in history. What am I saying? I can't believe there was a time in history where we didn't know the depths and lengths of what anxiety could do physically to your body. Anyway, today's episode is with my buddy, John Congleton, who also produced my first full-length record over the course of like 2 years. He also tracked a single for us called The Garden. That was like the first thing we did together, amongst some other stuff. He co-wrote on a couple of the songs that'll be out on the deluxe edition of the record, and also co-wrote It's Still Cool If You Don't, which is like the single off of Sunflower, which I have really come to find like a new place in my heart that I love it more than I ever did now, which is cool. I feel that way about the whole record, which is a cool place to be talking about this episode now. We talked for a really, really long time, and the clips that I put in, it's one steady, I think it's the first like 40 minutes of the conversation. We really kind of got into some really crazy bits of conversation, just some really kind of heady topics, and I loved the first 40 minutes so much. He says so many awesome, like, wildly unique things in this first bit that I really just wanted to highlight that. So I abbreviated our conversation, but that being said, I hope the payoff of doing that is that you guys can really enjoy these first 40 minutes for those of you listening. For those of you not listening, you won't know I just said that. But yeah, he's such an interesting dude. He's totally someone that I could ask for advice and know I was going to get an honest answer from. He really showed me a lot of cool music, helped me figure out how I like to make records, helped me figure out how little I like certain attitudes like about making records. Like, he helped me really feel confident to like trust myself in making an album that I wanted to make, and that being enough, not being told by other people that I didn't know what I needed to know to make a record, which is dope. He put a lot of trust in me, which at the time I think was scary for me, just because I had never really had that before, or like it just, the stakes maybe felt lower to like be the one calling the shots creatively and stuff. But like he really was open to any idea that I had, and would tell me honestly how he felt about them. And it was really cool to collaborate with somebody that way. He's also, cutie. Oh, I just want to tackle him into the ground. We talked in Southern accents a lot while we were making the record. I wish I would have gotten him to tell a couple stories that he told us when we were there, because they were so funny. He's so funny. Yes, he's from Texas, so we related on having Southern dads who say the phrase, "Come on now, just like that. It can mean like 100 different things. It can be a good thing, a bad thing, a medium rare thing. Man, thank you guys for listening up to this point. I think this is the last episode of the season. Maybe that's stupid and wrong, but I think it will be. This has been a lot of fun. What a douchey way to say that. It's been more than just a lot of fun. It's been a great time. I've gotten to have some amazing conversations with friends. I feel more confident in talking to people now. I was nervous when we did this episode just because I value his opinion and conversations with him a lot. And I feel like that's been a pretty common thread throughout all of these episodes. Like, I have been nervous. And going forward, I'm just like stoked to do, I want to do more of these. The intention of this originally was to be about the record, like about Sunflower, but it became a lot of just like talking to people and just like having funny conversations or serious conversations and just like enjoying my time talking to these people. So yeah, there'll be more, I hope, because it's easy to do. Like, it's crazy how accessible it is. I mean, I guess I'm really, really lucky to get to do this. I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but with the opportunities I've had, this has been like really something that feels like if I have the opportunity to document conversations with really smart, interesting, creative people, like I should do that. And you guys are kind enough to listen, so thank you for doing that. Let's just all take a freaking breath for a second. I'm in my kitchen, the side of my kitchen. Now I usually do this in my bedroom, but I don't like it in there currently. It's there's not enough windows, man. There's 2 windows, but one is small, and then like really small, and then the corner where my bed is like in the dark. So it gets kind of sad at times. I'm very thankful to have some light come in this kitchen. Shut up, Briston. If you guys are still here, thank you. John Congleton, the Bottle Rocket Company podcast. Let's fire it up. Well, dude, thank you for doing this, man.
Of course.
I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Oh, I bet you have.
Yeah, you know me. I've been counting down the hours till I got to see your sweet face, especially in the morning. You just glow in the morning time.
I'm a morning person. I'm not really,
Yeah.
no, you know what? I'm not a morning person. I'm not a night person.
Do you hit the hay pretty early?
Right now I do. I go through phases of sleep. Like right now I'm in a deep sleep state where like I sleep, a long time usually. During the winter. During the winter.
Hundreds of years.
During the winter time I will sleep longer. Like
I'm
good
LA?
for another. Yeah. I'm good for an extra like hour to 2 hours for sure during the winter time.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, it's hard to wake up and know that it's just going to be a winter day. Like the fact that, yeah, there's something about the season that is pretty brutal.
But I think it's more than that because it's not cold here, really. So
yeah,
that.
I remember we talked about that when we were out there, like seasons in LA.
They
just
don't
being
exist.
So exactly. So like you have to go out of your way to make it seem like something's changing. Like I guess for your sanity. Like
yeah. Otherwise, what happens is the time goes exceptionally fast, and you don't,
Sure.
there's no benchmarks or whatever. So it all becomes like a big epic blur, which I think is one of the reasons why LA people just become weird.
Yeah, I fucking bet, man. It's just it's literally one continual day, which is a cool part of making records out there.
Right.
I think it's like a weird time where it's like a vacuum where you go, and then whenever you come back, especially to come back to like Nashville or something, it's like, I mean, we ended the recording for the record in like February of last year.
It would have been almost exactly a year ago, if I remember correctly, because it was one of the very last things I did with people before the pandemic.
Yeah, that was the question I was going to ask.
Yeah, I did. I remember I did a session with the Regrets right after you, but the Regret session was like, I remember while we were doing that session, their entire tour that they were going to leave to go do, like less than a week later than the session was canceled, like while we were in the tour. So that's how I remember.
Wow.
I was like, oh, wow, this shit is heavy.
Yeah. Was that the first you kind of heard, like, of COVID
Oh, no.
stuff,
I mean,
or-
I was hearing about it in December, but like I think most people were hearing about it. But
Sure.
my assessment was that it was going to be like SARS was 10 years previously, maybe more than 10 years, actually. Yeah, it would have been 10 years, more than 10 years. You probably don't have a huge remembrance of SARS, but like that was like, there was a pretty extreme amount of panic around that. And I remember my band was on tour at the time, and it was like,
Oh, no
this
shit.
is going to get heavy. And like people were getting it in America. And
Oh, wow.
then shortly after that, there was it swine flu or bird flu?
I remember
It was 2009.
H1N1 with swine flu. Was that H1N1?
Yeah,
I was in like elementary school because we were doing like current events about that. I remember that.
I remember I was in a band. I was still in the same band at the time, and I was in San Francisco, and it was all over the news that that virus kind of came through Mexico into America, and I had this record that I had just put out that had a song called "The Common Cold." That was about. It was sort of like I had written the fear of intimacy, like the fear of somebody's germs,
Sure.
like this analog, which is a pretty easy analog. And
totally.
there's like a lyric in the song that was in an unmade bed in Mexico. You will catch my cough, you'll catch my cold.
Oh,
And
wow.
I remember like all these people were writing me like, you predicted this.
Wow, that's some prophetic shit, man. In the
Not
most
really.
terrifying way.
Not really. I mean, I was just I wasn't even actually singing about. I wasn't
Right,
even
but-
writing about an epidemic or pandemic.
Sure.
I was just using that as a metaphor. That's it. And
Yeah,
a
but-
pretty good metaphor, I thought.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but it was weird. That record came out right as that happened, and it was quite creepy.
I mean, that's so wild, especially to have such a, not like far-fetched, but such a like, well, this could never apply maybe to something so specifically, and then to have it literally match reality.
Yeah, there were like
to a
several
T.
lines of that song. I would have to go back and look at it that were like almost exactly what was happening in current events at that point. It was real strange.
I have found before that like when I have written things that I don't have, like just strictly metaphor shit, like just pretty like even more absurd things than that, the amount of times that it comes back around and actually lines up with something is crazy. I mean, like, did you find, was that a frequent thing that happened to you, or was that like a freak thing?
No, it happens all the time, but not like in like not in a mystical way like that. Like I would say, I've talked to other songwriters about this, and I'm sure that in some way you've experienced this, and you'll probably experience this even more.
Sure.
Is for the most part, I mean, I don't sit down and write my own music that much anymore, but I used to do it literally every day. And I used to kind of have a rule of like, I wouldn't judge anything. I would just write it, let it come out, no matter if I thought it was nonsensical or foolish or whatever. I would just kind of puke it out there and make sense of it later. And it's so interesting to me. How much stuff that I would do made sense to me way more 10 years later or 5 years later, of like, I would go back and go, oh, that's clearly what I was writing about.
Sure.
It was almost sort of like a Rorschach test, but 10 years or 5 years later. And it's almost like I was telling myself something. I was, like I was revealing something to myself. And that's how I kind of arrived at this belief that I still hold very true today, is that all art, whether I'm writing with somebody or producing with somebody or doing anything or writing for myself, it's all just a solipsistic journey of figuring out who I am to myself. That's like kind of the greatest thing about it is every sort of micro decision and impulse, rather dark or light, it's all sort of revealing to myself who I really am. And like, I think that that's one of the reasons why I keep doing it, because
Sure.
for most people, myself included, the true self is still an epic mystery. I'm constantly asking myself why I do things. Why did I do that? Why did I react that way? And
that's fascinating, man.
And that's what, to me, like art, why I keep going back to it, why I have to do it every day, is because I feel, if for no other reason, I feel like I'm learning something about myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's fascinating, and I feel the same way. It's so interesting that it's not. I think that is so commonly mystified, and especially like when you're growing up and being like influenced. You know, I grew up being so influenced by, you know, a lot of young male angsty songwriters that I thought were just tapping into this vein that was not something that could be explained. You know what I mean? And as I got older and started to like look back on the people, the Cobains and Nick Drakes and Elliott Smiths, these were people that were obviously dealing with so much emotional weight. Mm-hmm. And to think of applying what you were just talking about to like those cases, and just really any case, like it is really interesting that we are so often setting ourselves up to just be approaching like our emotional shit from a different perspective, as opposed to like cracking this crazy code and like just spewing something out that like no one understands. But like, yeah, I mean, it all happens for a reason. Is essentially
right. And
like
I would go you one further.
Awesome.
I would go you one further with all that. I would just say that the moment that you put out a song, or the moment you write a song, or the moment you hand it over to the public or the universe, it's kind of no longer your song. Sure. And I had like, there's this guy named Brandon Boyd who's in was an extremely famous band in the 90s called Incubus, and the band is still together. And he's I never followed that band because I was kind of too old for that when that happened. But it's interesting to me, like somebody who music I never followed, how much he is doing the exact same thing when he writes, because he's such a tremendously sweet person, and we've had some great conversations about songwriting, and he was just telling me the same thing about how like you know, like he didn't even realize that he was sort of plugged into a zeitgeist or something. That band was so huge, and you know, it was an insular thing, and then all of a sudden, you know, millions and millions of people are singing along with their songs, and it's like this. It's almost sort of like the songs didn't mean much to him, or he didn't understand even what the songs were about until he had the crowd singing it back to him. Sure, which isn't something that I've experienced on that scale, but I've certainly had the experience, and I'm sure you have, where like somebody, either like a fan or a friend, will say, "Hey, I love this song. Like, I love that it's about this," and you're like, "Oh, I didn't know it was about that." You know, like,
yeah, dude, exactly.
And and it's like, holy shit, it is about that.
Yeah,
or maybe it isn't, but it is to them, and it's not your song anymore. It's their song.
Exactly. And what a fucking crazy thing, dude. Because then, I mean, that just completely changes. I have struggled with that, changing the filter that I apply when I'm writing from that point, because then I'm like, okay, someone connected with this song and this specific line about loving yourself seems to be a thing. And like, then I've struggled with like going back and being like, was that a common theme in everything that I've written? Like, is that my, you know, like my main point that I've been fixating on, and like, is that going to be the thing I look back on in 10 years? And I'm like, oh, that's what I was explaining to myself. So it's definitely changed. It's a really strange experience to have people do that. Mm-hmm. And I work actively to like not try to play into that too much, or like, I don't know, I heard that like Rick Rubin quote the other day that was like, the second you start considering an audience, you're discrediting the art or whatever. And I think that's an interesting thing. What is your take on that? Because like, do you think if your music is having an emotional impact on people that you're obligated to consider that when you're writing? Or do you think it's, I mean, because I feel like it's so hard not to, especially after people like in the Brandon Boyd situation. I mean, that's so many people like genuinely benefiting so much. I'm sure it's just exciting to consider that it might help people. So, I mean, what do you think?
I would tend to agree with that quote in terms of like the moment that you're sort of infiltrated by what a perceived audience would think of something. It's sort of dubious what you're doing. What I would push back on, though, about that is just the simple fact that that's just your perception of what the artist...
Right.
That's just your perception of what the audience is going to think, which in Jungian theory would just mean that that's just an extension of your own perception of yourself. Right?
The old ego.
So how the fuck are you going to know what your audience is going to expect of you, really?
Right.
So, so it's really just you judging yourself. Now, I mean, I've talked a lot about this because I've had a lot of friends that this happened to, people I've worked with for years, and I've seen the change and the struggles that they've gone through of like when success infiltrates your art. A lot of times when money and success and comfortability infiltrate, it does seem to be that the art suffers and it's not as good, it's not as exciting, it's not as potent. And there are exceptions to that, and I've really like looked at what those exceptions are because the exceptions are very few and far between. There are like
yeah.
You know, there's artists that are able to somehow put the blinders on and just continue to move forward. But I think that it's just because you have more noise. As the expression goes, you spend your whole life writing your first record and 6 months writing your second record, you know?
Right. Absolutely.
And so that's a problem right there.
Sure.
But then you have like this idea, you have all these people that are siphoning money off of you at that point. You have like your manager, your label, your road crew. This is, you know, extreme examples. Your bandmates, perhaps.
But real. Yeah, I mean, it's reality.
And you would be a psychopath or a sociopath to not consider the fact that these people are gainfully employed by you.
Absolutely.
I mean, let's have a good faith belief that all of them have good intentions, okay? But you would be a Satanist to not consider their employment that you are quote responsible for, right?
Yeah, it's a livelihood,
right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge, heavy burden. And then you have the fact that you've got all these people coming up to you telling you that your music has changed their life or whatever the fuck they're saying.
The tattoos.
That's a burden. And I think it'd be kind of impossible for that not to infiltrate your brain. Now, frankly, that's where I think a producer can be really helpful, is sort of, if it's a good producer, to sort of turn the temperature down on all that stuff and just get to the core of what that person wants to say artistically at that point in their life. It's also hard to write about pain when you're comfortable, frankly. It just is.
Yeah.
There are examples of people that I really felt like, you know, like I feel like Pink Floyd in a weird way got more painful the more successful they got.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
And like Roger Waters was certainly writing, I mean, he really nailed a certain thing that I don't think could ever be done again, where it was like he had everything he wanted, but he felt more isolated ever. And like it's hard for somebody to listen to a rich person complain about feeling isolated.
Absolutely.
And so, but he was able to do it in a way that felt that was people were able to resonate with like The Wall and things like that. That's the one thing I think about where it's like, wow, they really, in my opinion, they met that challenge.
Absolutely. Well, it's a perspective thing. I think I would definitely agree with everything that you said, and I think once in my very minor like minuscule experiences with seeing kind of the world of people in my life that are now, you know, not solely reliant, but definitely are affected by like how I make shit and how I like create stuff. Like I have definitely had to, I've definitely had, I've seen the benefit of shifting my perspective on my pain and my life experiences as opposed to diving one way or the other on an extreme of like completely isolating myself from these people for the sake of focusing on my own feelings or completely including everyone. Because I think that's where you start walking. I don't know. That's where you see like really huge departures from like a record that you really love to like a band then making a record that so obviously was really fun for them to make maybe and included everyone in their circle. And but there's such a tone to records where you can tell that they're considering
for sure.
And it's, I don't know. So, I mean, that's an interesting thing because like I have definitely had experiences in my life and like, it's kind of something I'm pretty like passionate about not doing now. It's funny that we're talking about this. Like I see a lot of people come to Nashville, particularly young music students for all these like music schools around here. And I see a lot of people struggle with, and I struggled with this as well, feeling like I did not belong artistically unless I was flexing my trauma. You know what I mean?
Your trauma.
Yeah. Well, I mean, paying attention to like there's a strange thing I think with my generation of musicians that like puts a lot of pressure on being fucked up to a really alarming degree to the point where there's like people will fabricate shit.
Like that's interesting to me, but I want to put a pin in that because I also want to tie that back to like I have a totally different point I wanted to make about the Rick Rubin quote. I got the first half of what I wanted to do, but I think that the second thing I'm going to say is going to tie into that. But go ahead and finish your thought if you have more.
Essentially, I was just going to ask you, which I think you have an answer for. I was just going to ask you what your perspective on, like, what do we owe as artists and people who make music to constantly be reopening wounds or reopening focus on pain in a place of comfortability? Is it like, you know, you make a record at a time you're in pain and that does well and allows you to live comfortably and allows you to have perspective that makes you happy? And then are you just supposed to be like, okay, cool. Like, I get it. I'm going to go like work a normal job and appreciate that I got to do this. Or is it, because dude, I struggle with that all the time. Like I feel like shit when I'm like having a good day and getting to sit in this like beautiful bedroom, you know, and I'm like just still making myself think about how I felt when I was a kid about,
got it.
You know, like, you know what I mean? Am I making sense?
Absolutely. But like, I mean, this is a huge topic. I want to just circle back again to the other side of the Rick Rubin quote. The sort of like, once you're considering an audience, what did he say exactly? I'm
paraphrasing, but
yeah,
it was essentially like as soon as you start considering an audience while you're writing, you're like discrediting the art, or like you're affecting the art.
Negatively. Okay, yeah. No, I mean, I think it's impossible for that not to be true, as I've said before. I will say that I'm 43 years old. I've been making records. I've been making money from making records in some capacity for over 25 years now. I've been able to see a lot of shifts, and I've made records on the tiniest spectrum with the tiniest bands to the biggest spectrums with the biggest bands. I've kind of done all of it. And one thing that I think is really different now with how the audience relationship with the artist is the audience, and this is not a bad thing, this is just different. The audience, there's a little bit more of a demand for a social responsibility now with music and art in general that straight up fucking didn't exist in the 90s whenever I was coming up, when I started. And sometimes that's weird to me because for me, and I'm like, Rick Rubin's older than me, but we're both Generation Xers at the end of the day. It's weird to me because the whole idea of punk rock and the things in new wave and the things that came about that was like, fuck everything, do exactly what you want to do not consider the artist, and the art does not need to be some reflection of your internal belief of how the universe works. It doesn't matter. Sure. It's just an expression. It's value neutral. And I still kind of believe in that, in the fact that, like, don't censor yourself. Just say what you want to say. And I think the greatest art that's out there is the art that was created when people felt like they had the ability to be reckless with their words and how they played, and there was a danger. My favorite records just sound that way, like the Stooges and things like that.
Oh yeah.
That being said, now the audience has almost a direct relationship with the artist, and so if an artist says something irresponsible in their music, or it's deemed as irresponsible, or they're singing or performing from a place that is deemed as a place of privilege, then the audience feels like they have a right to kind of roast them or skewer them or judge them and expect that the art is different. It's almost like the audience and the artist are in a conversation now.
Sure.
And the art...
That's a great way to put it.
And like, it's like the listening of the music is a creative endeavor as equal to the creation of the music. That's peculiar to me. I get uneasy about that, but what I'm trying to say is, like, that's a thing now that I still don't think about that often, that I think people your age think about all the fucking time. It's kind of a second nature thing, and I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that's a generational difference.
Oh, absolutely.
That I'm still, I find myself needing to recalibrate to every now and again. Go ahead.
I feel the same way, frankly. Like, I think that the generation just a little bit under me, I think kids that are in high school right now are like...
That would be your generation, though, still.
Fuck.
It would be. That would be your generation. But like, look, I mean, obviously these things, there's not lines of demarcation, like very distinct. I mean, it's like, obviously I'm a cusp of a Generation X, like, but I grew up. Am
I a millennial?
No,
is that what
you would not be a millennial. You would be Z.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's got a ring to it.
Like, for example, I'm 43 years old. I'm right on the cusp of Generation X and millennial, but I grew up in a city, which means that I'm more millennial than Generation X in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Right?
I think that's an interesting...
Because I was around more culture as opposed to somebody that was living in rural area who would be maybe like developmentally 10 years behind me, sort of coming up, like they'd be more Generation X-y than me. Yeah. Right?
Okay. That makes sense.
So I feel like I can recalibrate pretty easily to this new way of thinking. But that being said, whenever I'm making art, fuck the audience. Fuck them. I make it. It's none of my business how they interpret it. This is how I feel deep down. It's none of my business how they interpret it. They can love it, hate it, be offended by it, not be offended by it, be bored by it. None of my business. Don't care. Don't have a huge desire to talk to them about it either. I have no desire to hear what their opinion is of the music. And I don't really feel like I need to explain the music. That's boring to me. Like, to like talk about it, that I'm robbing you of something if I try to tell you what it meant to me.
It's like having two conversations. I totally understand presenting an idea and then feeling like then to explain it would just be to like sing the song twice, but like dumbing it down. I understand.
Well, also here's another thing. There's a hilarious quote by Tom Waits that he said he never likes to talk about his music because, like, and he gives an example. He's imagine he's sitting at a piano and he's about to play you a song, and he goes, "This song is about Jackie Onassis," and everybody goes, "Ooh!" But another audience, he says, "This song is about Nancy Reagan." And everyone's like, same song, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like perception is reality, is what I'm trying to say. Like, so, like,
Absolutely.
why even go there? So,
sure.
What I'm getting back to is, like, I think it's slightly generational as far as, like, the conversation that artists are having with their audience. But I think at the end of the day, for me, it's worked better for me when you don't concern yourself with the audience. And as Brian Eno would say, you shoot an arrow and move the target instead of shooting an arrow at a target.
At a target. Interesting. You know? Yeah, I never heard that quote. That's wild. Ugh, that's fascinating, man. All right, everybody. That was a brief conversation with John Congleton. Thank you guys for listening. I think this is the last episode of the season. Wow. What the hell? That feels weird. I didn't expect it to actually feel so strange. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Onward and upward. I'd like to thank our sponsors. The bottom of my foot. That is our sponsor. It's funny to say that because it's silly. Thank you guys. Have a great day.